Hello, namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Wild, dangerous and inconsistent. That's how Donald Trump's Ukraine policy was described, but now it's on the verge of delivering. Ukraine has agreed to a U.S. ceasefire proposal. They're willing to stop fighting for 1 month to discuss the next steps. The ball is now in Vladimir Putin's court. Will he also agree to pause fighting? We'll tell you what his options are and what led to Ukraine's U-turn. Meanwhile, Donald Trump turned the White House into a Tesla showroom. The U.S. president bought Elon Musk's car in a show of support for U.S. products. In India, there is talk of a visit by Vice President J.D. Vance. In Pakistan, it's a race against time to end the Balochistan train hijack. In Mauritius, Prime Minister Narendra Modi launches an attack on colonialism, a special report on India's snack market and the billion-dollar Haldiram's deal. What Starlink's entry means for India's internet landscape and how an artificial heart has completed an unprecedented milestone. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. The tariff war escalates. Canada announces additional tariffs on more than $20 billion of U.S. goods. It is a retaliation against American tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium. This will come into effect from tomorrow. These tariffs will hit products that include computers and sports equipment. India's retail inflation eases to a 7-month low. It fell below 4% in February. Year-on-year retail inflation was down to 3.6% last month. It was 4.3% in January. The decline was largely driven by lower food prices. Elections likely in Portugal as its prime minister resigns. He stepped down after his government lost a no-confidence vote in parliament. The outgoing prime minister has called for polls as soon as possible to avoid instability. This will be the third election in Portugal in 3 years. Hungary's government wants to change the constitution so that it can strip dual nationals of their citizenship temporarily. Prime Minister Viktor Orbán says he wants to oust liberal networks from the country. This is being seen as a crackdown on NGOs that receive financial support from the United States. And the African Union warns of a huge risk of partition in war-torn Sudan. Since April 2023, the paramilitary forces have been fighting with the Sudanese army. Last month, the paramilitary announced that they were forming a parallel government. The conflict has killed thousands of people and displaced more than 12 million citizens.
Hopefully President Putin will agree to that also, and we can get this show on the road.
There's something about Saudi Arabia. Maybe it's the air or the water or the setting. Whatever it is working because the kingdom is delivering reset after reset. Last month, it hosted U.S. and Russian officials. Yesterday, it hosted U.S. and Ukrainian officials. Both meetings ended in success. Kyiv has agreed to a U.S. ceasefire proposal. It's not a permanent one. It will last for 30 days. Basically, Ukraine is willing to stop the fighting for 1 month.
During today's talks, the American side proposed taking a first step forward, establishing a full ceasefire for 30 days. Not just stopping missiles, drones, and bombs, not just ensuring security in the Black Sea, but implementing a complete ceasefire along the entire front line. Ukraine welcomes this proposal. We see it as a positive proposal and are ready to take this step.
It's a big climb down by Volodymyr Zelensky. He was suspicious of talks with Russia, but now he's all in. He has also agreed to sign the minerals deal with the Americans, the same one that he walked out of. If you look at the optics, so much has changed. Last month, Zelensky was kicked out of the White House. But yesterday, the US and Ukraine released a joint statement. A statement that praises the brave Ukrainian people. And this also tells you a lot about Donald Trump. Most times his unpredictability is bad, but sometimes it can be good. Because in Jeddah, Ukraine was not the only side making concessions. Trump gave them something in return. He has resumed military aid and intelligence sharing to Kyiv. Remember, both these things had been paused by the United States. The idea was to force Zelensky to the talking table, and it worked. Now that he is there, the aid freeze has been lifted. U.S. weapons will once again flow into Ukraine. But the big headline, of course, is a ceasefire. Zelensky has agreed to it, so the question now is, will Putin agree too? Will he agree to the ceasefire deal? U.S. officials plan to meet the Russians soon. They will present the truce proposal to Moscow.
We're going to take the offer to them. We're going to tell them this is what's on the table. Ukraine is ready to stop shooting and start talking. And now it'll be up to them to say yes or no. I hope they're going to say yes. And if they do, then I think we made great progress. If they say no, then we'll unfortunately know what the impediment is to peace here.
That was Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the U.S. Foreign Minister, if you will. Let me highlight what he said. I'm sorry. If Russia agrees to the truce, great news. If they don't, we will know what is the impediment to peace. Basically, whether it's Russia or Ukraine that is impeding peace. That's what the Americans want to find out. President Trump is hopeful of a breakthrough. He says he will speak to Putin this week. Listen in.
To get the Russians to agree?
I'll talk to Vladimir Putin, yeah.
When will
I
you
want to
talk
get,
to him?
look, that's the other, it takes two to tango, as they say, right? So hopefully he'll also agree. And I really think that would be 75% of the way. The rest is getting it documented and, you know, negotiating land positions, etc.
So you'll talk to him this week about the deal?
So, yeah.
And when
And what is Russia saying? The Kremlin has refused to say yes or no. They are waiting to be briefed by the Americans. Only after that will they comment. And it's a bit of a pickle for them. A similar truce was proposed by France last month, and Russia was quick to reject that. And you can see why. Putin has the advantage on the battlefield. If he keeps fighting, he can annex more Ukrainian land. If he stops, he will give a breather to Kyiv to maybe regroup or restock. Plus, Vladimir Putin is under no pressure to cease fire. Trump can bring Zelensky to the table by cutting off aid, but he has no such power or leverage over Putin. At best, Trump can impose some sanctions. So militarily, a truce does not really make sense for Russia. It is a no-brainer. But politically, like I said, it's a pickle. If Putin does not agree to the truce, it will create a perception that he never wanted peace in the first place, that all this diplomacy was bluster. It was all fake. So what will he do? Will he demand a peace deal instead of a truce? Will he set tall conditions for it? Or will he agree and take it from there? Among the people, there is little hope. Both in Ukraine and in Russia, after 3 years of war, they are wary of truce talks.
Given the fact that while the talks were still being held, Russia launched Shahid drones at us, chances are low that Russia will agree to ceasefire.
Now, to be honest, I am very doubtful that Putin will agree to the ceasefire. They officially said a few times that they won't stop until they capture Kherson region.
For sure, for us, proposed ceasefire is not good, because we advantage on the battlefield.
I am not a specialist, but I think proposed ceasefire won't be effective.
We have learned a few things from yesterday's talks. Number one, U.S.-Ukraine ties have rebounded. After the Oval Office disaster, it seemed very unlikely, but Trump's pressure tactics have paid off. Zelensky has agreed to American terms. That's the first takeaway. Number two, the fears of a unilateral peace were hyped up. The fears that Trump would cut a deal without Ukraine. That's not happening. Clearly, that was not his plan. Yesterday's joint statement reaffirmed Ukraine's place at the table. It also hinted at a role for Europe. And finally, point number three, the truce proposal could move things along. Until now, every side has been keeping their cards close to their chest. But now they cannot afford to do that. Russia will have to give a response to the truce request. If they accept, Kyiv will have to sue for peace. If they don't accept, Trump will have to make a choice. Does he keep up the mediation effort? Does he cut off military aid to Ukraine? Does he put sanctions on Russia? Or does he just leave both countries to figure things out themselves? He will have to decide. And it all hinges on Putin's next move. We'll be tracking things closely for you.
We don't need cars from Canada. We have car companies that are not building in Mexico. It's very unfair that they'd build in Mexico and sell them across the border with no tax, no nothing.
The United States is applying a 25% tariff on imports of steel and aluminum. We deeply regret this measure. Tariffs are taxes.
So Trump is making progress with Ukraine, but elsewhere he remains on the war path. He is expanding his trade war. 2 days ago, U.S. markets collapsed. Recession fears triggered a mass sell-off. It wiped out over $1 trillion in one day, $1 trillion. But instead of stepping back, U.S. President Donald Trump is doubling down. He's made it clear that there is no going back on America first.
We've been treated very unfairly by Canada. We've been treated very unfairly by Mexico. But we've been treated very unfairly by every country all over the world.
Elon Musk was by Trump's side when he said all of that. It was, in fact, a special occasion. The president was shopping for a Tesla and hoping to make a point. You see, Tesla has hit a bumpy road. The past few days have been rough for Elon Musk and his car business. The Tesla stock has been plunging, sales have declined. So Trump decided to help out by buying a Tesla car.
Move it around, it'll really be wild.
Wow.
That's
beautiful. This is a different panel than I've had. Everything's computer. That's beautiful.
With this, Trump declared his full support to Elon Musk. He warned that those who are protesting against Tesla, in fact, he accused them of domestic terrorism. That's what he called the protesters, domestic terrorists. And he said that they are harming a quote-unquote great American company. It's a good spin. Trump is trying to show that he stands behind American companies. He also had a message for investors, those who are betting on U.S. stocks. Trump was asked again about the possibility of a recession. Will there be a recession in the U.S.? That's what he was asked. The last time he was asked this, he refused to rule it out. This time, though, he had a different response. He said there will be no recession in the United States.
Your comments the other day not ruling out a potential recession seemed to rattle the stock markets. The Commerce Secretary said there wouldn't be one.
Boom. Just so you know.
Just specifically on the recession.
Yeah.
Do you think there will be a recession?
I don't see it at all. I think this country is going to boom. But as I said, I can do it the easy way or the hard way. The hard way to do it is exactly what I'm doing, but the results are going to be 20 times greater.
Mr. President, you asked...
And remember, Trump is always right?
Trump says the U.S. economy is going to boom. Now, this is a clear U-turn. A few days back, he refused to rule out the possibility of a recession. But now he's predicting a boom. What explains the shift? The market reaction. The last time Trump spoke, he said the U.S. economy is in transition. And that statement triggered a stock market collapse. So now he's changed his tune, but experts are not convinced. Reuters conducted a poll. It spoke to leading economists from the US, Canada, and Mexico, and it asked them if there will be a recession. Look at the result. 95% of the economists from these three countries said yes. They said the risk of a recession is high, not just in the US, but also in Canada and Mexico. And the reason is Trump's tariff war. He is going after more countries now. He is training his guns on Europe. All steel and aluminum imports from Europe now face higher tariffs. The US has hiked them to 25%, and within hours, the European Union shot back. It imposed retaliatory tariffs on America.
The countermeasures we take today are strong but proportionate. As the United States are applying tariffs worth $28 billion, we are responding with countermeasures worth 26 billion euros.
Brussels says it is ready to negotiate, but does Trump feel the same? Highly unlikely. The US president is using tariffs as leverage. He wants investment deals and tangible commitments, and this is the price for lifting tariffs.
Tariffs are, they don't want to pay 25% or whatever it may be. It may go up higher, maybe go up higher. Look, the higher it goes, the more likely it is they're going to build. And ultimately, the biggest win is not the tariff. That's a big win. That's a lot of money. But the biggest win is if they move into our country and produce jobs. That's a bigger win than the tariffs themselves.
Trump is in no mood to slow down. He says he's defending American businesses. In his view, tariffs create a level playing field. So he's expanding his trade war. He started with 3 countries, China, Mexico, and Canada. And now he's added the European Union to the mix. In between, he's also retracted. He has reversed some of his decisions. Like yesterday, he gave more relief to Canada. The tax on Canadian steel and metal is at 25%. Trump wanted to double it and raise it to 50%, but now he's put that plan on hold. And all of this is only adding to the uncertainty and chaos. The US president keeps swinging between extremes. This is making investors and economists jittery. Buying a Tesla that he may not drive and branding protesters as domestic terrorists is not going to help. Now let's turn to India. There's some buzz in the air here about 1, possibly 2 high-profile American guests. Only one visit has been confirmed so far, that of Tulsi Gabbard, the new US Director of National Intelligence. She put up this post on social media. She's on a 4-nation tour, and stop number 3 will be India. Tulsi Gabbard is coming for a conference of intelligence chiefs. You'll have chiefs from other Quad nations too, like Japan and Australia, and of course India, and some intelligence heads from G7 countries. All of them are being hosted by India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. And Tulsi Gabbard's presence here is a big deal. Look at her post again. She says, and I quote, "Building strong relationships, understanding and open lines of communication are vital to achieving President Trump's objectives of peace, freedom and prosperity." That's what she said. Now, you may have doubts about these objectives, but the first part is a fact. Understanding and communication are vital, especially for the security of the Indo-Pacific. And both the groups are sending their intelligence chiefs, the Quad and the G7. They understand the risk posed by China. The US is very well aligned here. So Gabbard's participation in New Delhi should be a major step forward, a step to secure our part of the world. The fact that she's flying down to New Delhi and also making it so public sends a clear message that security comes first, despite any other differences we may have. And speaking of differences, India could also end up hosting another American heavyweight, someone who ended up making waves the last time he was abroad. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. Reports say he's headed to India later this month along with his wife, the Second Lady, Usha Vance. As you might know, Usha Vance is of Indian descent. Her parents are from the Indian state of Andhra Pradesh. They migrated to the U.S. and Usha Vance was born there. If she does end up coming to India, it will be her first trip since she became the U.S. Second Lady. As for J.D. Vance, this will be his second overseas trip. His first one was to France and Germany for last month's Munich Security Conference. And you might remember that because of his fiery speech there. Vice President J.D. Vance berated America's European allies last month. He told them to step up and to deal with their own problems. You, of course, remember him after that with Ukraine's President Zelensky, when J.D. Vance told Zelensky to say thank you. So the US Vice President has become synonymous with combativeness. And he could be heading to India soon, which begs the question, is he going to pick a fight over here as well? Vance has not targeted India before. In fact, he met Prime Minister Modi in the US last month and he was all smiles, calling the Indian Prime Minister, and I'm quoting, gracious and kind. So we'll have to see if this attitude holds. Because the US does have one big gripe with India, and that is tariffs. US President Donald Trump has taken aim at New Delhi before, calling India a tariff king and a big abuser. Those were his words, tariff king and big abuser. A few hours ago, the White House highlighted Indian tariffs again, tariffs on alcohol and agricultural products. So New Delhi is definitely in Trump's crosshairs. India could be hit with reciprocal tariffs on the 2nd of April. Even though the government is trying to avoid it, negotiations are underway. This is a sensitive time for tact and diplomacy. And at this time, Trump is sending J.D. Vance to India before the reciprocal tariffs take effect. If Vance comes, will he take his usual combative approach or will he opt for a more measured outreach? I guess we'll have to wait and see. It's day 2 of the train hijack in Balochistan. The military operation is still underway. And right now, it's a race against time. Baloch militants still control most of the train. Earlier today, they issued an ultimatum to Islamabad. Free Baloch prisoners in 48 hours. If not, the hostages will be killed. That deadline will expire by Friday afternoon. So Pakistan's army is facing an uphill battle. We'll tell you about their operation, but first, let me show you a new video. A video that shows the moment this train was attacked. The Jafar Express going from Quetta to Peshawar. Take a look. This train was carrying 400 plus people. It was attacked near a tunnel by the BLA. The BLA is the Baloch Liberation Army. It's a separatist group in the Balochistan province of Pakistan. Pakistan's government says 70 to 80 fighters were involved in this attack. They bombed and then boarded the train, which brings us to the operation. Hundreds of Pakistani troops have been rushed to the site. Helicopters have also been deployed. Pakistan says around 190 passengers have been rescued, though it is not clear how they've been rescued, whether the army freed them from the BLA or whether the BLA released them on their own. That is not clear. Either way, hundreds still remain stuck. Pakistani officials say that 30 BLA fighters have been killed. 30 Baloch fighters have been killed. If true, that still leaves around 50 fighters. So as things stand, this operation continues. Those freed are being moved to nearby towns. Some of them have recounted the hijack. Listen to this.
लोग चीख रहे थे, गाने मार रहे थे, बस कुछ लेट गए, हम भी लेट गए पूरी ट्रेन में, सब लोग लेट गए कि अपनी जान बचाएं। बस बाहर से कुछ फायरिंग हुई, ब्लास्ट हुए, इसके बाद फिर हमें कहा कि आप लोग नीचे उतरे, लोग नहीं उतर रहे थे, मैं अपने बच्चों को लेके उतर गया।
लांचर लगा इसको, इंजन को जा रहे थे, लांचर लगा तो धुआं हो गया, फिर फायरिंग शुरू हो गया, फायरिंग था, फिर लॉन्चर थे, ऐसे धमाके थे कि बस अल्लाह ने बचा दिया। मगर ये है कि हम बुढ़ी को उतारा, सबको उतारा नीचे, बोला उतरो नहीं तो गोलियां मारेंगे, उतर गया नीचे, फिर हमको देखा, बोला बस तुम जाओ।
You can imagine the horror. There are young children on that train, and many of them are still being held hostage. The Pakistani military is trying to flush out the militants, but they're facing two problems. One is the terrain. It is rugged, mountainous, and in the middle of nowhere. This hijack happened near the city of Sibi, which is almost 160 kilometers from Quetta. Quetta is Balochistan's capital. This rugged terrain is making it hard to access the train. That's the first problem. The second problem is suicide bombers. Pakistan's government says that some BLA militants have strapped bombs on themselves, and they're seated along with the passengers, especially the women and children, which is why a gung-ho approach may not work. The military is trying to be cautious. Even as this operation drags on, bigger questions are being asked, like, how was such an attack even possible? The thing is, the BLA has been striking with more frequency. In fact, they have targeted this same train before. But the previous attacks were rudimentary operations. This one was a lot more complicated. They stopped, boarded, and hijacked an entire train with more than 400 people on board. It rarely happens anywhere in the world. It is also off-brand for the BLA, the Baloch Liberation Army. They cannot compete directly with Pakistan's army. So they've usually depended on guerrilla tactics like sabotage and hit and runs. That has been their modus operandi. So how did the BLA manage to pull this one off? Pakistan state media has a theory. They say the BLA is getting support from Afghanistan, from the Taliban in Kabul. Apparently, even the Baloch leadership is there in the Afghan capital. Let's look at the map first. Balochistan shares a massive border with Afghanistan. It is almost 1,500 kilometers long. Again, rugged and vast. Pakistan has accused Kabul of sheltering Baloch militants. Their relationship has gone downhill since 2021. That's Pakistan's relationship with the Taliban. It has gone downhill since the Taliban took Kabul. Islamabad did help the Taliban capture power, but the Taliban have refused to do Pakistan's bidding since, especially cracking down on militants. Reports say the Taliban is giving abandoned U.S. weapons to Baloch groups. You may remember the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan in 2021. They left behind a lot of tech. They left behind things like helicopters, artillery, and guns. The Taliban is apparently sharing this with militant groups, basically nudging them to strike Pakistan. If true, it would explain the daring and complex nature of yesterday's attack. Islamabad's first priority at this point is to free the hostages, but afterwards, tough questions will have to be asked. So far, the military has used brute force to subjugate Balochistan. Will they reassess that strategy now, or will they double down? We'll be watching this space closely. Now let's turn to Iran. The country has been under a lot of pressure, or should I say maximum pressure, from the U.S. President Donald Trump. He's back in the White House. One of his first acts after taking office was to reinstate his policy of maximum pressure on Iran. The goal? To deny Iran all paths to a nuclear weapon. Trump has said that he wants to work out a deal. He wants Iran to agree to never making a nuclear weapon. And he says his maximum pressure tactic is the way to ensure this. Iran, however, is not impressed.
We're ordering you not to do this, and not to do that, or we'll do this. If that's the case, I'm not coming to negotiate with you at all. Go and do whatever the hell you want.
That was Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian. He's tired of all the threats. So he just told Trump to do whatever he wants. Iran will not bow to pressure.
We need to have a relationship with the world. We don't want to break off with anyone. We don't want to fight with anyone. But we're not supposed to bow off in humiliation to anyone. Should they come forward with dignity, we will speak with dignity. But as they threaten, or what they did to Zelensky, it was really shameful.
Pezeshkian says Iran will not bow or be humiliated. He cites what happened with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, how Trump humiliated Zelensky at the White House. Iran's President Pezeshkian says his country will not tolerate that. And that is a fair ask. What about Trump's response? He says he offered Iran a choice: military action or peace talks.
Very, very soon. You'll be talking about that pretty soon, I guess. And hopefully we can have a peace deal. You know, I'm not speaking out of strength or weakness. I'm just saying I'd rather see a peace deal than the other. But the other will solve the problem.
Trump says he sent a letter to Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. That letter will be delivered soon, reportedly via an Emirati delegation. But the letter might not get the reception that Trump is hoping for. You just heard Iran's President Pezeshkian, and Khamenei has a similar view.
Some bullying governments insist on negotiation, but their negotiation is not aimed at resolving issues, it's for domination. They'll raise new demands, and these new demands will certainly not be met by Iran regarding the country's defensive capabilities, regarding the country's international influence. Don't do this, don't meet that person, don't go to that place, don't produce that thing, your missiles' range shouldn't exceed such and such a distance. Can anyone accept these things? This is what negotiation is for.
Khamenei claims that the talks are a ruse. He says the U.S. won't just talk about nuke restrictions. Khamenei believes that they will want more, like limits to Iran's ballistic missile range. Now, there are two ways to look at this. One, you can say that Iran is being paranoid, that they are refusing a chance for peace based on assumptions. That is one way to see this. Or you can say that Iran is fed up with all the back and forth. Because remember, a nuclear deal was already in place once, back in 2015, and it took shape after years of negotiation. But what happened to that deal? Trump pulled out of it unilaterally. This was in 2018 during his first term as president. Iran said it was abiding by the previous deal, but Donald Trump did not care. He tore it up and imposed his first maximum pressure policy. So why should Tehran believe him now, especially under pressure? So you can see why the Iranians do not seem keen on talks. But there's also another side to all of this. Perhaps an out for Iran.
China will hold the China-Russia-Iran-Beijing meeting on the Iranian nuclear issue on March 14th. Vice Foreign Minister Ma Jiashu will chair the meeting. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov and Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Garibabadi will come to Beijing to attend. The three parties will exchange views on the Iranian nuclear issue and other issues of common concern.
China is holding a nuclear summit on Friday. It has invited Russia and Iran. These three countries will discuss Iran's nuclear issue, China, Russia, and Iran itself. Let's face it, the West probably won't accept this. They are likely to discredit any outcome from this meeting. Europe probably will not believe any Russian guarantees over Iranian nukes, or Chinese ones for that matter. And here lies the dilemma. Because it wasn't Iran who broke the last nuclear deal. It wasn't even Russia or China. It was Donald Trump. He was the one who tore up the last deal unilaterally. So who's really the more trustworthy party here? For Iran, there is no contest. Do you know what girmitia is? It comes from the English word agreement. During the 1800s, the British transported thousands of Indian laborers to their colonies. They worked on plantations. Most of them were made to sign an agreement, or what the locals called a girmit. Those who signed it came to be known as girmitias. Almost 1 million such girmitias were sent to Mauritius. They settled there and they became citizens. But their heritage remained Indian. And why are we talking about them tonight? Because India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a 2-day visit to the island nation, and he talked about this story during his speech. He talked about how the British duped these girmitias. Our next report brings you more.
It's day 2 of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Mauritius. And today, the island nation marks its National Day. One deeply tied to India's history. It's celebrated on March 12th, the same day that Mahatma Gandhi began the Dandi March. Prime Minister Modi is the chief guest at the celebrations, an honor he first received in 2015.
140 करोड़ भारतीयों की ओर से मैं मॉरिशस के सभी नागरिकों को राष्ट्रीय दिवस की हार्दिक शुभकामनाएं देता हूं। यह मेरे लिए बहुत सौभाग्य की बात है कि मुझे दोबारा मॉरिशस के नेशनल डे पर आने का अवसर मिल रहा है। भारत और मॉरिशस का संबंध केवल हिंद महासागर से ही नहीं, बल्कि हमारी साझी सांस्कृतिक परंपराओं और मूल्यों से भी जुड़ा है। हम आर्थिक और सामाजिक प्रगति की राह पर एक दूसरे के साथी हैं।
The Indian Navy is also part of the grand event. The INS Imphal docked at Port Louis on March 10th. Now, the naval destroyer has opened its decks to the public, inviting curious visitors aboard. Besides that, Prime Minister Modi also held a roadshow in the capital. Hundreds lined up to see the Indian Prime Minister. After that, Prime Minister Modi headed to the Ganga Talao in Port Louis. There he poured Ganga Jal, that is holy water from the river Ganga, into the water body. He also performed the Ganga Aarti there. The visit was an important one for both India and Mauritius. 8 MOUs or Memorandums of Understanding were exchanged between the two nations. India will also support the building of Mauritius's new parliament. India and Mauritius also raised their relationship to an enhanced strategic partnership, covering areas of artificial intelligence, health, and digital technology. Both sides also reaffirmed the special and unique ties that the two nations have. Mauritius's ties to India began almost 2 centuries ago, in 1834. Slavery was banned in the 1830s, so the British needed a workforce for their sugar plantations, and they decided on Indian labourers. They transported thousands to the islands. They were from the states of Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu. These labourers were promised a bright future, but they found themselves in captivity, working in the sugar plantations of Mauritius. It's something that Prime Minister Modi talked about during his visit, on how the British duped Indian labourers.
वो अनेकों हिंदुस्तानी जो गुलामी के कालखंड में यहां झूठ बोलकर लाए गए, जिन्हें दर्द मिला, तकलीफ मिली, धोखा मिला, और मुश्किलों के उस दौर में उनका संबल थे भगवान राम।
These workers were referred to as Girmitiya. The word Girmit comes from the English word agreement. Girmitiyas refer to the people of the agreement, or people of the indenture contract. The contracts these Indians were made to sign to work abroad. These Indians were treated inhumanely, working long hours in poor conditions, and they were often beaten and sexually abused. Not just that, Prime Minister Modi also recalled his 1998 visit to the country for the International Ramayan Conference. He visited the nation as the General Secretary of the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party. But the visit wasn't just about official meetings. He explored the country's natural wonders, including the 7 coloured earths in Chamarel and the Chamarel waterfall. So, as the Indian Prime Minister concludes this visit to Mauritius, the trip was more than just diplomacy. It was a tribute to shared history, cultural ties, and a future together. A journey that wasn't just political, but deeply personal. With this visit, India and Mauritius reaffirm their bond, not just as partners, but as family.
At just the age of 12, Ganga Bishan Agarwal found his passion. It was bhujia, a beloved crispy Indian snack. He was immersed in his father's bhujia making business, and there he had a bold idea. Bhujia was traditionally made from besan, which is chickpea flour, but he made it from moth flour instead. It was a simple tweak to make it thinner, and it proved to be a game changer. It changed the game forever. In 1937, Haldiram's began as a small shop in Rajasthan's Bikaner, and today it's a household name in India. This company is worth 90,000 crore rupees. That is $10 billion. It captures 13% of India's snack market and exports to more than 80 countries, 80. A testament of this success is this new deal. According to reports, Temasek has acquired a 10% stake in Haldiram's. It is a Singapore-based investment giant. The deal is worth around $1 billion. Neither company has confirmed it yet, but insiders suggest it is a done deal. And Haldiram's is not alone. There is a fierce race for a share in this snacks market. It is not just growing, it is exploding. Right now, the Indian snacks market is worth around 47,000 crore rupees, which is around $5.4 billion. By 2033, it could be worth 1 lakh crore rupees, nearly $11 billion. So it could almost double in less than a decade. What is fueling this rapid expansion? A whole lot of factors. The first one is urbanization and rising incomes. India has a growing middle class. They have higher disposable income, so they're increasingly opting for packaged snacks. That too, over home-cooked alternatives. 2 is the convenience culture. There's a shift in eating habits, especially among young professionals. They prefer things on the go, so ready-to-eat snacks are a popular choice. The third factor is health and wellness trends. There's a growing demand for healthy snacking alternatives, for gluten-free and guilt-free binging. Now, this has given rise to snack alternatives, which are millet-based or air-fried or protein-enriched. And the last factor is the global flavor fusion. The Indian taste palette is evolving. New global flavors are all the rage, and this explains the popularity of hybrid snacks in India, like your Sriracha Chivra or wasabi-infused chips. This is what the market looks like today. And who is dominating this market? Like I said, Haldiram's is on the top. They control 13% of India's snacks market. And there are some foreign players too, like PepsiCo with Lay's. Chips are the most popular product, but traditional Indian snacks also have a sizable market. Things like aloo bhujia, sev and chana dal. It shows that while India's snacking habits are evolving, they're still rooted in its culinary traditions. And the most interesting aspect is the price and packaging. It's a very wide spectrum. Most Indian snacks start at small pack sizes priced at 5 to 10 rupees, which ensures deep market penetration, especially in the rural areas where affordability is key. Most brands have mini packs to make sure that snacking is accessible to everyone. On the other end of the spectrum, there are premium offerings, like your gourmet dry fruits, millet-based snacks, protein bars. These cater to the urban consumer, the people who are less price sensitive and looking for healthier choices. There's also a growing preference for sustainable packaging. And all of this shows how big and varied the market is and how the consumer consciousness is shifting. No wonder foreign firms want a bite of it. The Indian snacks market is poised for a boom, and with the appetite for snacks only growing, the competition is set to get tougher. The Haldiram's Temasek deal may be the latest headline, but it's only the beginning. The battle for India's snacks market is heating up. With every chip, bhujia strand and nut, it's worth its weight in gold. Do you think that a man-made pump can do the job of a human heart? Over the past decade, many doctors have asked this question. Few patients have made the gamble, and critics have deemed it impossible. After all, it sounds like science fiction. But maybe they will have a change of heart because history has just been made. A man has lived for 100 days with an artificial heart. The Australian patient had heart failure, so doctors replaced his heart with a pump made of titanium. If you don't believe us, take a look at this report.
This is the human heart. It's a crucial muscle about the size of your fist, and it works like a pump that sends blood around your body. The heart does this all day, every day, for years on end. It beats 35 million times annually, pumping more than 7,500 liters of blood each day. But sometimes it becomes ill. Every year, the world over, more than 23 million people suffer from heart failure. This is a progressive condition which leaves the patient feeling weak and unsteady. As the heart slowly gives out of the 23 million, only 6,000 people receive a donor heart. But now they can hope to turn back time. How, you ask? With an artificial heart. History has just been made. A man with heart failure has lived for 100 days with an artificial titanium heart. This is the longest period to date of someone living with the technology and then walking out of a hospital with it in a world first. So what is an artificial heart? Before we discuss this, let's go back to basics. What are artificial organs? These are man-made devices. They can be made of plastics, metals, and even lab-grown cells. These organs can be implanted or integrated into the human body to replace a natural organ and to restore one or many natural functions of the body.
That's good.
So far, only few such devices have been under development, including artificial retina, artificial esophagus, and artificial heart. The artificial heart that has just gone down in the history books has been invented by Australian bioengineer Daniel Timms. For Timms, the science is personal. He invented the device following his father's death from heart disease, and now his work has come to fruition. The total artificial heart is the world's first implantable rotary blood pump. It is constructed from titanium, so it's not susceptible to wear and tear. It has only one moving part, a rotor, which is held in place by magnets. There are no valves in this artificial heart, but it can pump blood to the body and the lungs, replacing the function of a natural heart. The implant is still in the early stages of its clinical study, but it has already been successful in bridging a crucial gap. It can keep patients alive until they get a donor heart. This is exactly what happened in the case of the Australian patient who received the heart. He got the device in November during a 6-hour operation in Sydney. He was discharged from the hospital in February. The device kept him alive until earlier this month when he received a donor heart. It is a medical milestone. But doctors want to take this a step forward. They want artificial hearts to become an alternative for donor heart transplant patients. After all, the need for more transplant organs is immense, and it's only growing. This comes as doctors are working on not just artificial organs, but other advances as well, like cloned, gene-edited or modified animal organ transplants. But this type of medicine is in the development stage, and this applies to the artificial heart too. So far, it can function for 100 days. Meanwhile, a donor heart can last for more than 3,000 days or 10 years. So there's a long way to go. But with a recent achievement, there's great promise that the artificial heart will go on.
Now let's talk about Starlink, Elon Musk's internet service company. For years, Starlink has been trying to enter India, but progress has been slow and uncertain. Starlink has struggled to clear India's regulatory hurdles. Now it seems to have finally found a way in by joining hands with major players in India. In the last 24 hours, two big deals have been announced. Starlink is partnering with Airtel and Jio, the two biggest telecom providers in the country. Together, they will bring Starlink services to India. These deals have taken observers by surprise because Starlink had initially pitched itself as a competitor to these companies. Both Airtel and Jio were said to be planning rival products. They wanted to challenge Starlink. But now these companies are joining hands. Airtel and Jio will distribute Starlink in India. They will sell Starlink devices and offer its services to their customers. Like I said, Airtel and Jio are India's largest internet providers. Starlink won't replace their networks. Instead, it will be integrated into them. And how would that work? This partnership opens a range of possibilities. As you may be aware, Starlink does not need wires. It operates through a satellite dish, like the one that is used for DTH television. Starlink connects directly to satellites. It transmits data via radio signals. So consumers get faster internet speeds. And they can connect from anywhere. All they need is a Starlink device. It works even in the most remote locations. In fact, that's the biggest advantage of Starlink. Indian telecom networks won't have to lay new cables or install routers or fiber optics at home. They can expand coverage by selling Starlink devices. The technology could also help India. This country is home to over 900 million internet users, but internet penetration remains at around 47%. And that means around 700 million Indians do not have stable internet. Starlink could help bridge the digital divide. Partnering with local players helps the American company too. It lowers the cost of entering the Indian market. They won't have to build an elaborate retail network or set up costly infrastructure. This was a major hurdle for Starlink. India had asked it to set up a monitoring center here and ensure that Indian data is not routed from countries that share land borders with India. In simpler terms, the demand was this: Indian data must stay within India. Indian data must stay within India. That was a key concern of New Delhi. Now, by tying up with Indian telcos, Starlink may be able to avoid some of those regulatory hurdles. It can lean on Indian partners for compliance. Having said that, the company still does not have a go-ahead. It is still waiting for licenses from Indian regulators. But with these deals, the roadblocks should be cleared quickly. What Starlink now needs are customers. That is the remaining piece of the puzzle. How can Starlink find customers in a country like India? It's a tough market to crack. Affordability is key here. And that poses a problem for Elon Musk's company because Starlink is not a cheap service. One Starlink device, one unit can cost anywhere between 25 to 35,000 rupees or even more. That's roughly $300 to $400. Some reports say the device can cost even more than that. Then there are the monthly internet bills. Those could range from 5 to 7,000 rupees. That's about $80. Broadband internet is much cheaper. On average, Indians pay between 700 to 1,500 rupees for broadband, which is less than $20. So finding the right price point would be key for Starlink's success. As things stand, its entry into India may just be a matter of time. For our last story tonight, let's talk about Saturn. As you already know, this is a ringed gas giant. It is the sixth planet from the Sun. But let me tell you this. If there is a race to become the monarch of moons, Saturn definitely comes first. Astronomers have discovered 128 new moons orbiting Saturn. This brings its total up to 247 moons. That's almost twice as many as all the other planets combined. And this is fascinating news, but it has also stirred an old debate among astronomers. Our next report tells you more.
Far, far away from Earth in outer space, it seems that an unlikely race is underway. A race to win the title of Moon King. The planets of our solar system have many moons. Earth has 1, Mars has 2, Neptune 16, Uranus 28, Jupiter 95, And now, thanks to its latest haul, Saturn has 274 moons. Yes, you heard that right. Astronomers have discovered 128 new moons orbiting the ringed planet, bringing its total up to 274. That's almost twice as many as all the other planets combined, and it gives the gas giant a lead in the running tally of moons. All of the 128 new moons are being called irregular moons because that's what they look like. They are potato-shaped objects. They are between 2 and 4 kilometers in diameter, and scientists say that they could have been formed about 100 million years ago as a result of smash-ups and collisions between larger moons that left debris in Saturn's orbit. The question is, could the planet have even more moons? Well, it's not beyond the realm of possibility. As telescopes become increasingly powerful, scientists are able to gather a wealth of data, and what were once seen as fuzzy blobs are now recognized as moons. As recently as 2019, scientists found 20 new moons of Saturn. In 2023, 62 more were found, and now in 2025, 128 more moons have been added to the list. As fascinating as this escalating number is, it raises an important question. What counts as a moon? How tiny can a moon be before it's just a rock? So far, no one has the answer, but these questions have the potential for future disagreements. Because, according to experts, there's no proper definition for what's called a moon. A moon is defined as an object that orbits around a planet or other bodies that are not stars. There are millions of small rocks floating in space. Many of them are only a few kilometers across. For context, our moon is 3,476 kilometers in diameter. So, should small space debris even qualify as a moon? According to the International Astronomical Union, which has the responsibility of cataloguing celestial objects, as long as the objects have trackable orbits around their parent body, they will be called moons. So the supposed bonanza of tiny moons is good news for Saturn, which is all set to increase its vocabulary. You see, Saturn's moons are conventionally named after Norse, Gaelic and Canadian Inuit gods. That's the tradition. By the looks of it, eventually the criteria will have to be relaxed. But for now, most moons of Saturn fall in the Norse cluster. Now the additional set of moons will follow the same pattern. Astronomers who discovered the 128 new moons have the right to name them. So, as scientists hunt for obscure Viking deity names, we can only imagine that Saturn must be over the moon.
There's good news for Manchester United fans. The club is building a new stadium. It will have the capacity to hold 100,000 people. Once completed, it will be the biggest in the UK. Like I said, great news for fans. They can now boo their team in a whole new stadium. I am kidding, of course. This is a huge deal for the club. Manchester United will finally have a stadium where they haven't lost a match. And it's not just us. Even hardcore fans are roasting the club. They say the new stadium resembles a giant tent. And what happens inside a tent? The circus. Also, the timing is weird. Manchester United just cut dozens of jobs. They have stopped giving free meals at their canteen, yet they're spending 2 billion euros on a giant stadium. It makes very little sense to fans. A lot like the club's strategies right now. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. NASA's newest space telescope blasts off to map the entire sky and millions of galaxies. China unveils a humanoid robot capable of riding a bike. And Egypt's Al-Azhar Mosque marks its 1085th anniversary with a massive Ramazan iftar. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1930, Mahatma Gandhi started the Dandi March. He walked from Sabarmati Ashram to the town of Dandi for 24 days. Gandhi and his followers defied the British salt laws by producing salt from the sea. It was part of Gandhi's civil disobedience movement. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
SpaceX shuts down all of its 9 engines. Shortly after that, stage 1 and 2.
Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us here on First Post America.